everyone thought my boss was a genius. Until my final slide exposed the truth in front of 17 executives and a billion-dollar client. She stole 8 months of my work, every chart, every word, and smiled like it was hers. But I had planned for this. And when she clicked back, her career ended right there. My name is Carly Weston. At 34, I've spent the last decade climbing the corporate ladder at Novosphere Solutions in Denver, Colorado. I'm the type of person who memorizes spreadsheets and can spot a miscalculation from across the room. Not exactly the life of the party, but in product strategy, those skills are gold. For the past 8 months, I'd been living and breathing what we called the Aurora Initiative, a comprehensive strategy to win a contract with Velocera Technologies worth hundreds of millions. This wasn't just another project. It was the kind that defines careers, mine, specifically. The night before the big presentation, I was still at the office, the glow of my monitor the only light in the building. The cleaning staff had come and gone, security had done 3 rounds, and I was still there, fine-tuning slide 72 of 131. "You're overthinking this," I muttered to myself, rubbing my eyes. It was 3:17 a.m. But I wasn't overthinking. This presentation needed to be perfect. Velocera's executives weren't just looking for a vendor, they were looking for a partner to revolutionize their entire digital infrastructure. My slides contained 8 months of research, market analysis, risk modeling, and strategic planning. I had interviewed 37 of their employees, analyzed their competitors, and built predictive models that showed exactly how our partnership would increase their market share by 27% over 5 years. I saved the file for what felt like the 100th time. Aurora, final, actual, use this one. PTX. It wasn't the most elegant naming convention, but it was 4:45 a.m., and elegance had left the building hours ago. Before closing my laptop, I did something I'd started doing years ago, a small act of personal validation. On slide 72, I hid a tiny smiley face in the corner of a complex data visualization. It was practically invisible unless you knew where to look. A digital signature of sorts. My little secret in a sea of corporate blandness. I finally went home, collapsed into bed, and dreamed of pie charts and bullet points. When my alarm blared at 7:30 a.m., I felt like I'd been hit by a freight train. 3 hours of sleep was not enough to function, let alone present the most important proposal of my career. But this was the day. I showered, dressed in my power suit, a charcoal gray ensemble that projected both competence and confidence, and headed back to the office. I arrived at 8:45 a.m., giving myself plenty of time to set up in the grand ballroom of the Denver Ritz-Carlton, where the presentation was scheduled for 10 a.m. As I walked through the lobby, I felt a surge of adrenaline cutting through my exhaustion. This was my moment. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa Rayner, my boss. "Carly, waiting for you in the prep room. Need to discuss presentation logistics." I felt a twinge of unease. Vanessa was the senior vice president of strategy. Technically my superior. But she had been conspicuously absent during the development of the Aurora Initiative. She'd attended exactly 2 of the 26 strategy meetings, both times leaving early with vague excuses about executive commitments. Her typical approach was to swoop in at the last minute, make a few superficial comments to demonstrate involvement, and then take credit when things went well. She was 41, Harvard MBA, with the kind of polished presence that commanded rooms without saying anything of substance. She knew how to work a boardroom, how to schmooze clients, how to make the right people feel important. What she didn't know was back-end architecture or risk modeling, the meat of what Velocera actually needed. When I entered the prep room, Vanessa was standing by the window, impeccably dressed in a navy blue designer suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her blonde hair was styled in a perfect bob, and her makeup was flawless despite the early hour. "Carly, there you are." Her smile was wide but didn't reach her eyes. "You look tired." "Late night finalizing the deck," I said, setting my laptop on the table. "But it's ready to go." "About that," Vanessa said, placing her manicured hand on my shoulder. I was thinking I should present today. I blinked, trying to process her words through my sleep-deprived brain. You? What? The board will be there, Carly. And Richard Kessler from Velocera. This is C-suite level. I think it would make more sense for me to deliver the presentation. My stomach dropped. Vanessa, I've been preparing this for months. I know every data point, every contingency. And you've done amazing work, she interrupted, her voice soothing but firm. But this is politics. Richard and I go way back. We were at a charity gala together last month. The board expects senior leadership to handle presentations of this magnitude. I wanted to argue, to remind her that she hadn't contributed anything meaningful to this project. But I could see in her eyes that the decision had already been made. This wasn't a discussion, it was a notification. I'll need your final deck, she continued. I spent all night studying it, but I want to make sure I have the absolute latest version. All night studying it? The file hadn't even been finalized until 4:45 a.m. There was no way she'd seen it yet. It's on the shared drive, I said, my voice flat. I'll pull it up. I opened my laptop and navigated to our team's shared folder. That's when I noticed something strange. My file. Aurora, final, actual, use, this one, PTX, was there. But next to it was another file. Aurora Deck VR. PPTX. VR. Vanessa Rayner. I clicked on it. The file opened to reveal my presentation. Every chart, every word, but with one key difference. The document properties listed Vanessa Rayner as the author. My heart pounded in my chest. She hadn't just decided to present my work, she'd copied it and passed it off as her own. Not just to the board or to Velocera, but to me, the person who had actually created it. I made a few minor tweaks for clarity, Vanessa said, watching me closely. Nothing substantive, of course. Your work was excellent. I closed the file, a strange calm washing over me. This wasn't the first time Vanessa had taken credit for her team's work, but it was the first time she'd done it so blatantly to me. And for something of this magnitude. Vanessa, I said carefully, this presentation represents 8 months of my work. Every data point, every analysis, every recommendation comes from my research. And you'll get full credit in the notes, she said dismissively. But the board needs to see leadership from the top. You understand how this works? Carly, this is just how the game is played. Just how the game is played. As if my career, my work, my intellectual property were all just pieces on a board for her to move around at will. The presentation starts in an hour, she continued. I need to review a few key sections. Would you mind giving me some space? I stood there, processing what was happening. I could escalate this to HR, but not before the presentation. I could confront her more directly, but that risked turning the situation hostile right before a critical client meeting. I could refuse to let her use my work, but that would potentially sabotage the entire Aurora initiative, which was bigger than just me or Vanessa. Fine, I said finally. I'll be in the ballroom setting up the AV. As I walked out, a memory surfaced from years ago. Back in 2018, I'd attended a PowerPoint training session where the instructor had mentioned slide triggers, a feature that allowed you to program conditional commands into a presentation. At the time, I'd thought it was just a cool trick. But now, I needed to get back to my laptop, and fast. I set up the AV system in the ballroom, then told the tech team I needed to check something in the prep room. When I returned, Vanessa was gone, probably off to charm someone important before the presentation. I sat down at my laptop and opened the original file. What I was about to do wasn't just risky, it was potentially career-ending if it backfired. But then again, watching Vanessa take credit for my work was already threatening my career. Working quickly, I added a new slide to the end of the deck, slide 132. Black background, white text, created by Carly Weston, stolen by Vanessa Rayner. Below that, I added the document properties showing the original creation date and author, me. alongside the modified file that now listed Vanessa as the creator. But the coup de grace came from a Zoom recording I'd saved from 3 months ago. In it, Vanessa had made an offhand comment to another executive when she thought I wasn't listening. "Carly loves all that data wizardry. I just make it sexy." I extracted the 6-second audio clip and embedded it in the slide. Finally, I programmed a trigger. If the presenter clicked back from slide 131, instead of returning to slide 130, it would jump to my new slide 132. It was a trapdoor, hidden in plain sight. I saved the file, ensuring it looked identical to the one Vanessa had copied. Then I replaced her version in the shared folder with mine. The file name remained Aurora Deck VR PPTX. But inside was my insurance policy. As I closed my laptop, I felt a strange mix of fear and vindication. What I'd done could backfire spectacularly. But sometimes you have to risk everything to stand up for yourself. At 9:55 a.m., the ballroom began to fill. Novasphere's entire executive team was there: the CEO, the CMO, the CTO, and various SVPs and directors. From Velocera, Richard Kessler had brought his leadership team as well. All told, 17 high-powered executives were taking their seats, ready to decide the fate of a potential billion-dollar partnership. And there was Vanessa, working the room, shaking hands, laughing at just the right moments. She looked completely at ease, as if she hadn't stolen someone else's work and wasn't about to present complex technical information she barely understood. I took a seat in the back row, my hands shaking slightly. Once the presentation began, there would be no turning back. At precisely 10 a.m., our CEO, Michael Harrington, stood to introduce the proceedings. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here today. As you know, Novasphere Solutions and Velocera Technologies have been exploring a strategic partnership for some time now. Today, we're excited to present our comprehensive proposal, the Aurora Initiative. To walk us through this groundbreaking strategy, I'm pleased to introduce our Senior Vice President of Strategy, Vanessa Rayner." Applause filled the room as Vanessa took center stage. She looked perfectly confident as she connected her laptop, which contained my presentation, to the projector. "Thank you, Michael," she began, her voice smooth and authoritative. "And thank you to everyone from Velocera for joining us today. What I'm about to present is the culmination of months of deep analysis and strategic thinking. My analysis, my strategic thinking. The Aurora Initiative represents a paradigm shift in how our companies can work together to dominate the market." For the next hour, I watched as Vanessa delivered my presentation with the polish of a TED Talk speaker. She hit every key point, emphasized every advantage, and addressed every potential concern, all using my words, my research, my insights. The audience was engaged, nodding along, taking notes. Richard Kessler, Velocera's notoriously hard-to-impress CEO, actually smiled during the ROI projections. To her credit, Vanessa was a skilled presenter. She knew when to pause for effect, when to make eye contact with key decision-makers, when to inject just the right amount of humor. But every time she said, "I discovered," or "my analysis shows," I felt sick to my stomach. Finally, she reached slide 131, the conclusion. A simple, powerful statement that I had labored over for hours. The future doesn't wait, neither should we. As she delivered this final line, the room erupted in applause. Several executives actually stood, including Richard Kessler. A standing ovation for my work, but not for me. Vanessa soaked it in, a modest smile on her face as if to say, "Oh, this is just what I do." "Thank you all," she said as the applause died down. "Are there any questions?" Richard Kessler raised his hand. "Vanessa, that was extraordinary. Could you go back to the previous slide? I want to make note of those projected ROI figures." My heart stopped. The previous slide? She would have to click back. Vanessa smiled. "Of course, Richard." She clicked the back button. For a moment, nothing happened. The presentation seemed to freeze. Then, like a digital ghost rising from the grave, slide 132 appeared on the screen. Created by Carly Weston, stolen by Vanessa Rayner. And before anyone could react, Vanessa's voice, her actual voice, filled the room. Carly loves all that data wizardry, I just make it sexy. The ballroom fell silent. 17 executives stared at the screen, then at Vanessa, then at the screen again. The document properties were there for all to see. Original creation. Carly Weston, modified version, Vanessa Rayner. Vanessa stood frozen, her mouth open but no words coming out. Her face had drained of all color. In the back row, I remained perfectly still, my expression neutral. I hadn't planned what would happen next. I had simply wanted the truth to be known. Michael Harrington, our CEO, was the first to break the silence. He stood slowly, his face a mask of controlled fury. "Vanessa," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Is this true?" She finally found her voice. I can explain. This is a misunderstanding. I was simply... Is this true?" Michael repeated, cutting her off. The room remained deathly quiet. All eyes were on Vanessa. "I guided the process," she said weakly. "I provided oversight and direction." "That's not what your voice just said," Richard Kessler interjected. "Carly loves all that data wizardry. I just make it sexy." "Those were your words, correct?" Vanessa's eyes darted around the room, finally landing on me. The look she gave me was pure venom. "Carly," Michael said, turning to me, "would you care to comment?" All 17 executives turned to look at me. This was not a moment I had prepared for. I had expected chaos, arguments, denials, not a direct invitation to speak. I stood slowly. "The presentation you just saw represents 8 months of my work," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "Every slide, every data point, every recommendation. I finalized it at 4:45 this morning. At 9 a.m., I discovered it had been copied and reattributed to Vanessa, who then informed me she would be presenting it instead of me." "This is outrageous," Vanessa sputtered. "I've been overseeing this project from the beginning." "You attended 2 of 26 strategy meetings," I countered, "and left both early. You haven't contributed a single substantive idea to the Aurora initiative. You haven't even read most of the research." "How dare you?" "Slide 72, I interrupted. "There's a tiny smiley face hidden in the corner of the market penetration graph. It's my signature. I put it there last night. If you'd created this presentation, you'd know it was there." Michael Harrington turned to Vanessa. "Show us slide 72. Vanessa's hands were shaking as she navigated back through the deck. When slide 72 appeared, Michael walked to the screen and peered at the corner of the graph. There it was, my tiny digital signature, barely visible unless you knew to look for it. "I've seen enough," Michael said. He turned to Vanessa. "You're fired, effective immediately. Please leave your badge with security on your way out." Vanessa stood there, speechless, as the reality of what had just happened sank in. "But you can't. I've been with this company for 7 years. And apparently taking credit for other people's work for just as long," Michael said coldly. "Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings." As if on cue, 2 security guards appeared at the door. Vanessa looked around the room, perhaps hoping for some support, but found none. With as much dignity as she could muster, she disconnected her laptop and walked out, the security guards following close behind. When the door closed, the room remained silent for a long moment. Then Richard Kessler cleared his throat. "Well," he said, "that was unexpected." He turned to me. "Ms. Weston, I believe you are the actual architect of the Aurora initiative." I nodded. "Would you be willing to continue the presentation? I still have some questions." I walked to the front of the room, connected my laptop, and pulled up the original file, my file. I navigated to the final slide, but then added one more. It was simple, just 5 words. "Let the work speak for itself." And then I answered every question, explained every detail, and demonstrated beyond any doubt that I knew this proposal inside and out because I had created it. By 3 p.m. that afternoon, Richard Kessler and Michael Harrington were signing the initial agreement to move forward with the Aurora initiative. By 5 p.m., I had been offered Vanessa's position as SVP of Strategy. As I packed up my things at the end of that very long day, Michael approached me. "Carly," he said, "what you did was risky. That hidden slide could have backfired spectacularly." "I know," I admitted. "But it was also brilliant," he continued. "Not just the slide, but the entire Aurora strategy. Why didn't you ever come to me about Vanessa before?" I considered the question carefully. "Because I didn't have proof," I said finally. "It would have been my word against hers, and she was very good at office politics." Michael nodded thoughtfully. "Well, your days of being overshadowed are over. The board was impressed not just with your work, but with your, let's call it, strategic thinking under pressure." I smiled for what felt like the first time in months. "Thank you, Michael." As I left the building that evening, I took one last look at the conference room where everything had changed. Not to celebrate Vanessa's downfall, but to remind myself of an important lesson. Silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's just the sound of someone planning their next move. The Aurora initiative would go on to become one of Novasphere's most successful partnerships, generating billions in revenue over the next decade. And I would go on to have the career I'd always worked for, one where my contributions were recognized and valued. But I never forgot that day, or the tiny smiley face on slide 72, or the look on 17 executives' faces when the truth was revealed. It taught me that in the corporate world, your work doesn't always speak for itself. Sometimes you have to help it find its voice. I drove home that evening with a strange sense of peace. The last 48 hours had been a roller coaster, from the depths of betrayal to the heights of vindication. I was exhausted, emotionally and physically drained, but also strangely energized. When I walked into my apartment, I kicked off my heels and collapsed onto my couch, still in my power suit. For a few minutes, I just stared at the ceiling, replaying the day's events in my mind. The expression on Vanessa's face when slide 132 appeared, the silence that filled the room, the way Richard Kessler had looked at me with newfound respect, the moment Michael offered me Vanessa's position. It was a lot to process. My phone had been buzzing all afternoon with messages from colleagues who had heard about what happened. News traveled fast in corporate America, especially news this juicy. I ignored most of the messages, not ready to rehash the story or accept congratulations that felt somewhat tainted by the circumstances. But there was one message I couldn't ignore. From Lisa Chen, my closest friend at Novasphere and the only person who truly knew how hard I'd worked on the Aurora initiative. "Holy shit, Carly, I heard what happened. Call me ACP." I sighed and dialed her number. "Carly," Lisa answered immediately. "Is it true? Did Vanessa really steal your presentation and then get publicly humiliated in front of Velocera?" "That's a pretty accurate summary," I admitted. "And they fired her on the spot and offered you her job?" "Also true." "My God," Lisa breathed. "I mean, we all knew she was taking credit for other people's work, but to be so blatant about it. And that hidden slide thing, that was genius. Risky as hell, but genius." I closed my eyes. I wasn't thinking clearly. "Lisa, I was running on 3 hours of sleep and a lot of anger." "Well, sometimes sleep deprivation and rage are the parents of invention." Lisa laughed. "Seriously, though, how are you feeling? This is a lot to handle in one day." I considered the question. Honestly, I'm not sure. Part of me feels vindicated. Part of me feels guilty for essentially setting a trap for her. And part of me is terrified about taking over her position. Guilty. "Carly, she stole your work. She was going to take credit for 8 months of your blood, sweat, and tears. She deserved what she got." "I know, but..." "No buts. You've been killing yourself on this project while she's been off at charity galas and long lunches. And it's not like this was the first time. Remember the Thompson account? The quarterly strategy review? She's been doing this for years." Lisa was right. Vanessa had built her career on the backs of people like me, hardworking, dedicated professionals who cared more about the quality of their work than who got credit for it. People who played by the rules and expected others to do the same. As for being terrified about the new position, Lisa continued, that's normal. But you've got this? You've basically been doing her job anyway, just without the title or the pay. I smiled despite myself. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You've just been too busy making pretty charts to notice, she teased. Anyway, we need to celebrate. Drinks tomorrow after work. A bunch of us are going to Maxwell's. I don't know. Lisa, I'm not sure I'm in a celebrating mood. Carly, listen to me. What happened today wasn't just about you getting justice. It was about all of us. Everyone who's ever had their work stolen by someone higher up the food chain. You're a freaking hero around here now. Let us buy you a drink, at least. I laughed softly. Fine, one drink. That's my girl. And hey, congratulations. Seriously, no one deserves this more than you. After hanging up, I finally changed out of my suit and took a long, hot shower. As the water washed over me, I tried to let go of the tension I'd been carrying for months. The Aurora Initiative had consumed my life, and Vanessa's betrayal had been a final, crushing weight. But now, suddenly, that weight was gone. I slept deeply that night, without dreams of pie charts or bullet points. The next morning, I arrived at the office early, as was my habit. But today was different. Today, I was no longer just Carly Weston, Product Strategy Specialist. I was Carly Weston, SVP of Strategy, with a corner office and a team of 23 people reporting to me. As I walked through the office, I noticed people watching me, some offering small smiles or nods of approval. By now, everyone had heard about what happened in the Ritz-Carlton ballroom. I was no longer invisible. Michael Harrington was waiting for me outside my office. Good morning, Carly, he said, extending his hand. Ready for your first day in the big chair? I shook his hand firmly. As ready as I'll ever be. Good. I've scheduled an all-hands meeting for your team at 10 a.m. I'll introduce you officially, and then you can take it from there. He paused, then added, any idea what you're going to say to them? I had been thinking about this all night. These 23 people had been my colleagues yesterday. Today, I was their boss. It was a delicate transition. I'm going to tell them the truth, I said. That I'm honored to lead the team. That I have a lot to learn about being a good leader, and that I'll need their support and expertise. Michael nodded approvingly. Honesty, humility, good start. He handed me a key card. This will get you into all the executive areas now. Welcome to the leadership team. Carly. As he walked away, I took a deep breath and entered my new office. It was spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a stunning view of the Rocky Mountains. Vanessa's personal items had been removed, leaving behind only the standard office furniture and equipment. I set my bag down on the large desk and took a moment to absorb the reality of my new position. This was what I had been working toward for years, though I hadn't expected it to happen quite like this. A soft knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. It was Emily, Vanessa's, now my executive assistant. Good morning, Ms. Weston, she said formally. I've prepared a briefing on your immediate priorities and scheduled meetings for the day. Thank you, Emily, I said, accepting the folder she handed me. And please, call me Carly. Emily seemed surprised, but nodded. Of course. Carly, is there anything else you need right now? I thought for a moment. Actually, yes. Could you schedule one-on-one meetings with each member of the strategy team over the next few days? 30 minutes each. I want to get to know everyone better and understand what they're working on. Emily raised an eyebrow but quickly composed her expression. Of course, I'll set that up right away. After she left, I flipped through the briefing. It was comprehensive, outlining ongoing projects, pending decisions, budget reviews, and various administrative tasks that now fell under my purview. The scope of my new responsibilities was daunting. At 10 a.m. sharp, I walked into the largest conference room where my entire team was waiting. Some faces were friendly, others wary, a few openly curious. Michael was already there, ready to make the introduction. "Good morning, everyone," he began. "As you all know, there have been some significant changes in our leadership structure. Vanessa Rayner is no longer with the company." He paused, allowing the weight of that statement to sink in. "I'm pleased to announce that Carly Weston will be stepping into the role of Senior Vice President of Strategy, effective immediately." There was a smattering of applause, led enthusiastically by Lisa from the back of the room. "Carly has demonstrated exceptional strategic thinking, attention to detail, and dedication to this company's success." Michael continued. "Her work on the Aurora initiative, which I'm happy to report Velocira has agreed to move forward with, exemplifies the kind of innovative thinking that will keep Novasphere at the forefront of our industry." He gestured for me to take the floor. "I'll leave you in Carly's capable hands." As Michael left the room, I felt all eyes on me. This was a pivotal moment, my first test as a leader. "Thank you all for being here," I began, my voice steady despite my nerves. "I know this transition is sudden, and change can be unsettling. So let me start by being completely transparent with you." I took a deep breath. Yesterday, I was one of you. Today, I'm standing here as your new SVP. That's a big adjustment for all of us. I don't expect to have all the answers. I don't expect to get everything right from day one. What I do expect is that we'll work together, communicate openly, and support each other as we navigate this transition. I saw nods of approval around the room, which gave me confidence to continue. Some of you have worked with me directly. Others only know me by name or email. That's going to change. I've asked Emily to schedule one-on-one meetings with each of you over the next few days. I want to know what you're working on, what challenges you're facing, and how I can support you better. More nods, a few small smiles. As for my leadership style, I believe in giving credit where it's due. Your work, your ideas, your contributions will be recognized and valued. Always. I didn't need to explicitly reference what had happened with Vanessa. Everyone understood the subtext. I also believe in open communication. My door is always open, literally. If you have concerns, ideas, or just want to talk, please come find me. I paused, looking around the room. I have a lot to learn about being a good leader, and I'll need your patience and feedback. But I promise you this, I will always be honest with you, I will always have your backs, and I will always value the work you do. I saw Lisa give me a subtle thumbs up from the back. Now, I know you all have work to get back to, so I won't keep you any longer. But I'm excited about what we can accomplish together. Thank you. As the team filed out, several people stopped to congratulate me or express their support. Lisa hung back until everyone else had left. "Nice speech, boss," she said with a grin. "Very inspirational." I rolled my eyes. Was it too much? I felt like it might have been too much. "It was perfect," Lisa assured me. "Honest, humble, but still confident. You struck exactly the right tone." "I hope so," I sighed. "I've never managed more than 3 people before, let alone 23. "You'll figure it out," Lisa said. "And you've got me to help. Speaking of which, are we still on for drinks tonight? The team is really looking forward to celebrating with you." I hesitated. Part of me still felt uncomfortable celebrating what essentially amounted to someone else's downfall, regardless of how deserved it might have been. But another part understood the importance of bonding with my team, especially now. "Yes," I decided. "I'll be there." The rest of the day was a whirlwind of meetings, briefings, and administrative tasks. By the time 6 p.m. rolled around, I was mentally exhausted but forced myself to head to Maxwell's, the upscale bar near our office that was popular with the Novasphere crowd. When I arrived, I was surprised to find not just a few members of my team, but nearly all of them, along with people from other departments. As I walked in, a cheer went up, and Lisa approached with a glass of champagne. "To Carly," she announced, raising her glass. Who taught us all that sometimes justice actually does prevail in corporate America? Everyone raised their glasses, and I felt my cheeks flush with embarrassment and pride. For the next couple of hours, I moved around the bar, chatting with colleagues both old and new. Many shared stories about their own experiences with Vanessa, projects where their contributions had been minimized, ideas that had been stolen, credit that had been misappropriated. I hadn't realized just how widespread her behavior had been. You know, I almost quit last year. Jeremy from Data Analytics confided, I spent 3 months building a predictive model for the Henderson account, and then Vanessa presented it to the client like she'd done it herself. When I brought it up, she said I was being territorial and needed to be a better team player. Similar stories came from others. Vanessa had created a culture of fear and resentment, where the hardest workers were often the least recognized. Well, that ends now. I promised them, under my leadership, your work will be acknowledged and rewarded. By the time I left Maxwell's, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about my career advancement, it was about changing the culture of our department for the better. The next few weeks were intense as I settled into my new role. The one-on-one meetings with my team members were eye-opening, revealing not only the depth of talent we had, but also the extent to which that talent had been suppressed under Vanessa's leadership. I made a point of recognizing good work publicly, giving team members opportunities to present their own projects, and creating a more collaborative environment where ideas could flow freely. It wasn't always smooth sailing. There were disagreements, challenges, and the occasional clash of egos. But gradually, a new dynamic began to emerge. The first major test came a month after my promotion, when we had to pitch for the Blackwell account, a potential client almost as significant as Velocera. The pitch required input from multiple team members, each bringing their unique expertise to the table. Instead of taking control of the presentation myself, I organized the team so that each person would present their own section. It was a risk. Client presentations were typically handled by senior leadership, but I wanted to demonstrate my commitment to giving credit where it was due. The day of the Blackwell pitch, I could sense the nervous energy in the room. My team members fidgeted with their note cards, adjusted their ties, and checked their slides one last time. Everyone ready? I asked, looking around at their anxious faces. Lisa nodded, though her usual confidence seemed slightly dimmed. What if they ask something we haven't prepared for? Traditionally, the SVP handles curveball questions. Then we'll figure it out together. I assured her, the person who did the research is better equipped to answer questions about it than I would be. Trust yourselves. I do. When the Blackwell executives arrived, I made the introductions and then stepped aside, explaining that they would be hearing directly from the experts who had developed each component of our proposal. That's unusual, remarked Charles Blackwell, the company's founder and CEO. In my experience, these presentations are typically handled by someone at your level, Ms. Weston. At Novasphere, we believe in letting the actual architects of our strategies speak for themselves. I replied smoothly, I could present their work, but they can speak to it with more depth and authenticity than I ever could. I think you'll appreciate the difference. Charles raised an eyebrow but nodded. Very well. Let's proceed. What followed was one of the most compelling presentations I'd ever witnessed. Each team member, speaking about their own work, brought a level of passion and expertise that I couldn't have replicated. Jeremy's explanation of the data architecture was brilliantly detailed. Lisa's market analysis was incisive and confident. Ryan's risk assessment was methodical and thorough. Throughout the presentation, I watched the Blackwell executives' reactions, initially skeptical. They gradually became more engaged, asking pointed questions that my team handled with impressive competence. When the presentation concluded, Charles Blackwell leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. Ms. Weston, he said, I've sat through hundreds of these pitches over the years. They usually feature one polished speaker who gives rehearsed answers to predictable questions. He gestured to my team. This was different. Refreshing, actually. Your people know their stuff, and it shows. Thank you, I said. They're the best in the business. I think we have a few more questions. Charles continued. but I believe we've seen enough to make a decision by the end of the week. As we packed up our materials after the Blackwell team had departed, I could see the pride on my team members' faces. Regardless of whether we won the account, they had proven themselves capable of operating at the highest level. That was incredible. Everyone, I said. You knocked it out of the park. It felt good, Jeremy admitted. Being able to present my own work instead of watching someone else take credit for it. Get used to it, I told him. This is how we'll be doing things from now on. 3 days later, we received word that Blackwell had chosen Novasphere for their digital transformation project, a contract worth over $50 million. When I announced the news to the team, the celebration was genuine and heartfelt. This wasn't just my win or the company's win, it was their win. Michael Harrington called me into his office that afternoon. The Blackwell account, he said, looking pleased. That's a significant victory, especially coming so soon after Velociri. The board is impressed. Thank you, I replied. The team did exceptional work. I heard about your approach to the presentation. Michael continued. Letting your team members present their own sections. That's unconventional. I tensed slightly, wondering if I was about to be criticized for breaking protocol. It is, but I felt it was the right call. Michael studied me for a moment. It was a risk, he said finally. But apparently, one worth taking. Charles Blackwell called me personally to comment on how refreshing it was to hear from the actual experts instead of just another executive mouthpiece. He smiled. His words, not mine. I relaxed. I'm glad it paid off. It's an interesting leadership style, Michael observed. Different from what we're used to around here. Different from Vanessa, you mean? Yes, he acknowledged. Very different. She was all about maintaining tight control, presenting a unified front under her direction, and taking credit for other people's work, I added, unable to help myself. Michael nodded. That too, as we now know. He leaned forward. Your approach, giving your team members visibility, letting them shine, it builds loyalty, creates a stronger team dynamic. I can see the difference already. That's the goal, I said. Keep it up, Michael advised. Just remember that as SVP, you're still ultimately responsible for the outcomes, good or bad. I understand, I assured him. If something goes wrong, I won't throw my team under the bus. The buck stops with me. Good, Michael said. That's what leadership is really about. Not taking credit, but taking responsibility. As I left his office, I reflected on how dramatically my professional life had changed in just a few short weeks. From being overlooked and undervalued to leading a successful team, winning major accounts, and earning the respect of the CEO. All because I'd refused to let someone else take credit for my work. The weeks turned into months, and under my leadership, the strategy department flourished. Team members who had previously kept their heads down now brought forward innovative ideas. Projects were completed more efficiently as collaboration replaced competition, and our success rate with new clients increased significantly. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. 6 months into my tenure as SVP, we encountered a significant challenge when a major client, Donovan Healthcare, experienced a data breach. Although the breach wasn't directly related to our work with them, it affected systems that interfaced with our solutions, causing widespread disruption. The client was furious. James Donovan, their CEO, called Michael directly, demanding answers and threatening to terminate our contract. Michael called an emergency meeting with me and the technical team who had worked on the Donovan implementation. This is a crisis, Michael said bluntly. Donovan is talking about suing us for negligence, claiming our systems weren't properly secured. Jeremy, who had led the technical implementation, looked stricken. But we followed all the security protocols. The breach came from their legacy system, which we advised them to update months ago. Can you prove that? Michael asked. Jeremy hesitated. I'd need to check our documentation, but yes, I believe so. I need more than belief, Michael said, his voice tense. I need certainty. Donovan is one of our biggest clients. Losing them would be a serious blow, not to mention the potential legal and reputation damage. All eyes turned to me. This was exactly the kind of situation where Vanessa would have looked for a scapegoat, someone to blame to protect herself. It would be easy to distance myself, to suggest that perhaps Jeremy's team had made an oversight. After all, I hadn't been directly involved in the technical implementation, but that wasn't my leadership style. "I'll handle Donovan," I said firmly. "Jeremy, get me everything we have on the security recommendations we made. Every email, every report, every presentation slide. If we advise them to update their legacy system, I want to be able to prove it." Jeremy nodded, looking relieved that I wasn't throwing him under the bus. "What's your plan?" Michael asked. "Transparency," I replied. "We'll do a full review of the situation, determine exactly what happened, and present our findings to Donovan. If we made a mistake, we'll own it and fix it. If we didn't, we'll demonstrate that clearly." Michael looked skeptical. "Donovan isn't in a mood to listen to reason right now." "Then we'll need to change his mood," I said with more confidence than I felt. "Give me 48 hours. For the next 2 days, my team and I worked around the clock, poring over documentation, reviewing email threads, analyzing system logs, and reconstructing the timeline of events leading up to the breach. The evidence was clear. We had indeed recommended that Donovan update their legacy system multiple times, warning explicitly about the vulnerability that was eventually exploited. Donovan's IT department had delayed the update, citing budget constraints. Armed with this information, I requested a meeting with James Donovan. He agreed reluctantly, making it clear that he still held us responsible for the breach. When I arrived at Donovan headquarters, I was shown into a conference room where James was waiting with his CIO and legal counsel. Their expressions were grim. "Ms. Weston," James said coldly, "I hope you're here to explain how you're going to make this right." "I'm here to get to the truth," I replied calmly, setting up my laptop, "and to figure out the best path forward for both our companies." For the next hour, I methodically presented our findings, showing email threads, meeting minutes, and technical reports that documented our repeated warnings about the vulnerable legacy system. I was careful not to sound accusatory or defensive, just factual and clear. "As you can see," I concluded, "we identified this vulnerability months ago and recommended immediate remediation. Your IT team decided to delay the update." I paused, then added, "That said, we could have been more insistent. We could have escalated our concerns to your level, Mr. Donovan. For that oversight, I apologize." The room was silent as James and his team absorbed the information. The CIO looked particularly uncomfortable. "Why are you showing us this?" James asked finally. "You're essentially proving it wasn't your fault." "Because fixing blame doesn't fix the problem," I said. "The breach happened. Your customer's data was compromised. That's the reality we both have to deal with now." I clicked to a new slide. "This is our proposed action plan. We'll provide a team of security experts to help contain the damage, upgrade all systems to prevent future breaches, and assist with customer communication, at no additional cost." James frowned. "You're offering to fix a problem you didn't cause, for free?" "I'm offering to be a true partner," I corrected him. "When one of us has a problem, we both have a problem. That's how successful long-term relationships work." James studied me for a long moment, then looked at his team. His CIO gave a small nod. "All right, Ms. Weston," James said finally. "You've made your point. We'll accept your proposal." As I packed up my laptop, James approached me privately. "Your predecessor wouldn't have handled it this way," he remarked. "No," I agreed. "She wouldn't have." "Refreshing change," he said. "Donovan values integrity in our partners." When I returned to Novosphere and reported the outcome to Michael, he seemed genuinely impressed. "You turned a potential disaster into an opportunity to strengthen the relationship," he noted. "Not many people could have pulled that off." "It wasn't just me," I said. "The team provided all the documentation and helped develop the action plan." Michael smiled. "And there you go again, sharing the credit. You know, when I promoted you, I had some concerns about whether you were ready for this level of responsibility. Consider those concerns officially gone. Over the following year, my reputation within Novasphere and throughout the industry continued to grow. We expanded our client base, increased revenue, and built a department culture that attracted top talent. The strategy team, once known primarily as Vanessa's Group, was now recognized for its collaborative approach and innovative thinking. I occasionally heard rumors about Vanessa. She had struggled to find another position at the same level, her reputation tarnished by the way she'd left Novasphere. Eventually, she'd taken a role several steps down at a smaller firm. I felt no satisfaction in her downfall, only a sense of justice that the truth had finally caught up with her. On the anniversary of the Velicera presentation, Lisa insisted on taking me to dinner to celebrate. 1 year since the infamous slide 132, she said, raising her glass. The day Carly Weston stopped playing nice and started playing smart. I smiled. I prefer to think of it as the day I refused to let someone else define my worth. However you want to frame it, Lisa said. It changed everything, for you, for the team, for the company. She wasn't wrong. That single moment of defiance had altered the trajectory of my career and transformed our department's culture. By standing up for my work, I'd created space for others to do the same. You know what the best part is? I mused. I don't think I would have become this kind of leader if it hadn't happened. Experiencing Vanessa's style of leadership, the taking credit, the undermining, the fear, it showed me exactly what not to do. Negative examples can be powerful teachers, Lisa agreed. The irony is that in trying to claim my work as her own, Vanessa actually gave me something much more valuable than a presentation. I said, she gave me a leadership philosophy. Always let the work speak for itself, and always make sure the right voices are heard. As we finished our dinner, my phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from Richard Kessler at Velicera, confirming that they wanted to expand our partnership significantly, potentially doubling the value of the Aurora initiative. Good news? Lisa asked, noting my smile. Just a reminder that doing the right thing pays off in the long run, I replied, showing her the email. Lisa raised her glass again. To slide 132, she said. May we never need another one. I clinked my glass against hers. To letting the work speak for itself, I countered. And making sure everyone's voice is heard. The next morning, I arrived at the office early, as had become my habit. The sun was just rising over the mountains, casting a golden glow across the Denver skyline. I paused at the window of my corner office, taking in the view. A year ago, I had been Carly Weston, product strategy specialist, working late nights and early mornings, creating presentations for someone else to deliver. Today, I was Carly Weston, SVP of Strategy, leading a team of talented professionals who were valued for their contributions and recognized for their work. The transformation wasn't just in my title or my office, it was in how I carried myself, how I advocated for my team, how I defined success. It was in knowing that my worth didn't come from having my name on a slide or receiving applause from executives. It came from building something meaningful and creating a space where others could do the same. As I turned from the window to start my day, I thought about that tiny smiley face on slide 72, my secret signature that had become a symbol of something much larger. A reminder that sometimes the smallest acts of self-assertion can lead to the most profound changes. In the corporate world, your work doesn't always speak for itself. But when you find the courage to give it a voice, to stand up for what you've created and demand the recognition you deserve, you change more than just your own story. You change the stories of everyone around you. And that, I realized, was the true power of slide 132.